นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings. Good evening. The weather has calmed down a bit. Had a few days of stormy, windy, rainy weather. Just reminding us of the uncertainties of the world. Even the weather can change very quickly, can build up a storm. The storm can pass, followed by a period of calm. Life is much the same. We have periods where we go through mental storms or personal life storms, quite often followed by periods of calm. Quite often we only notice the storms, so we say, my life is going through a tough time or a bad time. When it's the period of calm, because it's calm, we often don't notice. Even though it's there, if you reflect back on your life, you've had probably many periods of calm, but they tend not to stimulate the mind so much. It's the storms and the whirlwinds of life that we tend to remember. How do we deal with these changing conditions? Well, we have the practice of the Dhamma to help us. That's our good fortune. The Buddha encouraged us to live heedfully with the quality of apamada. So heedfully we practice the Dhamma or introduce the Dhamma into our way of looking at life, the world, the way we talk and act, the way we do things. People are often asking, how can I be more mindful in daily life? Must be one of the most commonly asked questions by Buddhists. Probably the simple answer is just be mindful. That's too easy to say that. Listening to the Dhamma helps. Listening to the Dhamma regularly reminds us of the teachings and can give a sense of urgency, reminding us why we practice and why it's helpful to us. Listening to the Dhamma also, we get clarity and understanding of things that we didn't understand before, or sometimes just deepens what understanding we have already, and that can bring up mindfulness and heedfulness. Associating with people who practice mindfulness also helps. You notice when you go on a retreat, say, everyone is trying to be mindful, maybe not speaking and putting a lot of effort into sitting, walking meditation. Then we tend to be more mindful because everyone around us is mindful. Coming into a monastery, we tend to be more mindful than when we're out in the world. So associating with people who are also practicing mindfulness makes us mindful, more mindful. going to or being in quiet places can help. It's not a guarantee, but it's conducive to being mindful. Not too many distractions. Even being in places that bring up a little bit of fear or make you alert. So like being in the forest can do that, because the forest is there's always something unknown around, another animal or another storm or whatever. Or in a graveyard or a charnel ground, can make you very alert because you're worried about ghosts or the unknown. There's many ways that mindfulness is stimulated. Sometimes just reflecting on uncertainty, impermanence makes us mindful. Brings us back to the present moment, cuts through some of the fantasies, expectations we get caught into. Reflecting on death can make us very mindful. If you ever go to a funeral, I was talking to someone who just went to a funeral, they said they haven't been to a funeral for like 10 years or something. Suddenly it brought up many thoughts about what's the purpose of life, why are we here, how to lead your life in a good way, and also, of course, the fact that we're not here forever, and at some point we're going to die. They said that made them very mindful, at least for a while. Reflecting on the Dhamma, so having heard the Dhamma and then reflecting for yourself on the Dhamma, so whether you're on your own or with other people, reflecting on the Dhamma can make you mindful. It reminds you to look after your mind, maybe reminds you of karma, that our actions have consequences, good and bad, depending on the kind of intention and what we're doing, how we're conducting ourselves. Reflecting on the Dhamma can make us pay more attention to what we're doing, why, get to know our intention better. Part of that is reviewing what you're doing, what you have done and what you're doing in your life. As monks, we have this, one of our daily reflections is, have I done anything that brings regret up in my mind? Have I said anything, done anything, or really, if we're being careful, have I been thinking something that makes me feel regret? Because obviously regret comes when you get caught into something because of a lack of mindfulness, a lack of clarity. You might start thinking in an unskillful way, or doing something unskillful. That's promoting mental defilement, increasing our defilements. So acting out of greed rather than out of Dhamma, acting out of anger rather than following the Dhamma. So maybe being unrestrained in a situation, unrestrained speech, unrestrained action, or even in meditation you observe how sometimes just unrestrained states of mind, we get lost into them. Then later you review it, you go back, recollect what you've been doing and saying and thinking, and if it brings up regret, that's the kind of clue that, maybe I wasn't so mindful. If you review, say if you get into the habit of reviewing, going through what you've said and done, say for the day, maybe at the end of each day you do this for a few moments, then not only do you learn something by just remembering what you said and done, what happened, and maybe understanding better whether something was skillful or unskillful, helpful or not, conducive to happiness or conducive to suffering. Not only do you learn that, but also if you do it regularly, then in your day you also become more mindful, because you know later on you're going to review what you said and done and think about it. So you become more careful and pay more attention to what you're doing and saying and even thinking through the day. Training the mind in wise reflection is an important part of the practice. So as a monk, you come into the monastery, you begin by wisely reflecting on the basic requisites that lay people are kind enough to provide for us: food, accommodation, robe material and robes, and medicines for the sick. These are the basics, the minimum that human beings need to live. And we get them, we receive them from the kindness of lay people, but then you have to reflect on how to use them well. Because sometimes in a monastery you get offered too much or more than you can use, either as an individual or as a whole sangha. So then you still have to think how much do I really need to sort of live as a monk for a day and a night. That's how you reflect on your food, how much food to take, just enough for a day and a night, to get energy, to feel healthy, to get some energy to keep practicing, to stave off feelings of hunger. If you're in a situation where you're offered more than you need, well, that's part of the practice, isn't it? You reflect, well, how much do I really need? How much in terms of robes? Well, you don't need a lot of robes, but you want to be, say, warm in the winter, so you might have some extra robes to keep you warm. But you don't need a whole wardrobe full of robes. Need a pair of shoes, maybe you need a few things, but part of your reflection is, well, how much do I need to practice the Dhamma? Sometimes that's highlighted when you travel, because you realize how much you've got when you travel and you're packing it into your bowl bag or your monk's bag. Or in a kuti, you stay in a kuti, sometimes the mind starts imagining, well, if I had this or I had that, just make the kuti a little bit better. But then you have to reflect, well, is it enough to practice? And really, we don't need a lot. You just need a space where you can sleep, sit. Again, if it can be warm for the winter, that's good, insulated with a heater. Maybe with a toilet, maybe not. Maybe with a pit toilet outside. But you don't need a lot to practice the Dhamma. So Ajahn Chah used to say, reflect so that you're one who's easy to look after, meaning you don't need a lot to practice the Dhamma, and then you can be very adaptable, you can live anywhere and practice anywhere. But that takes some wise reflection. Because our habit as humans is always to follow desire, build up kind of desires, and from that build up attachments. And sometimes we can't separate between what's an attachment just based on desire or what's actually a necessity. And there's a difference, because often we say, oh, I really need this to be comfortable. I need this medicine or this kind of food or this amount of clothing or this kind of accommodation to be comfortable, but maybe that's just an attachment you built up unwittingly or unmindfully, and it's not the same as what you actually need. So we have to constantly, have to be vigilant and wisely reflect. And the benefit is that, well, then it makes life easier. You have fewer attachments, fewer demands in your mind. I need this, I need that. And then when you meditate, your mind can settle down easier, and you have a certain freedom. When the Buddha encouraged us to practice wise reflection, he'd say, if you're looking at your mind, the way desires arise, that's the first part of wise reflection. How does it arise? Maybe, say, in terms of food, you just look at a certain food, you see it, so looking at it or smelling it without much mindfulness, then you start to desire something by contacting it through your senses. If it's food, then it may be the smell, the sight. Not so much the sound, but I guess it could occasionally you hear somebody cooking, and maybe the sound of the clatter of the pan or the crackling of something being deep fried or something, it might set you off. Sometimes it's a distant smell, like when I was in a monastery, Ajahn monastery on the edge of Bangkok, we'd come out to sweep the monastery at 3 PM, just at the time that the street vendors would put their charcoal fires out and start barbecuing the meat on the skewers on their little vending trucks. And you'd be sweeping and the smell would waft across from the village. So you have to be very restrained, very mindful, and reflect, I've already eaten today, I don't need this. You can appreciate a pleasant aroma, but you don't want it to go on to anything more, just stimulate desire, or maybe even worse, the thought, I need an evening meal. That's wise reflection. Seeing how a desire is triggered, how it arises. Maybe also noticing how it passes away. You keep sweeping, you keep practicing mindfulness, restraint, and that desire fades, maybe. Unless you have a particular attachment for whatever the cause of the smell is. But if you are mindful enough, it will fade. And then you can say, when I establish mindfulness, maybe go to my sweeping, or the movement of the body, or the breath, or recite Buddho, or reflect on impermanence. There's a number of things you can do to bring the Dhamma up. Then you can see that desire, the interest, the desire, the attraction fades away. So you know why you are attracted to that smell or sight, whatever it is. But you can also observe that it's impermanent, it passes away. And that's wise reflection. So desires, attachments, they have an origin and have a trigger, but in their nature they're also impermanence, they pass. But then you can reflect more deeply, well, what is the attraction of that particular thing? If it's a smell, you associate it with past experiences, you've got memories of having eaten that food, it was tasty, so it gets you. If you're not mindful, it will get you every time. So what is the attraction? And then what is the disadvantage or the drawback of it? Well, it pulls your attention, so maybe your mind is filled up with that desire for a little while. Takes you away from your meditation objects, you become unmindful, creates an attachment which you keep coming back to if you're not very mindful or aware of what's going on. Well, every time you smell that same smell, you keep going to it. It's like you become a slave to it. That's attachment is like that. You're not free, you're a slave to it. You keep thinking in the same way, maybe looking, seeking it out, depending what it is. But then the Buddha said, look for the liberation. What's the way to liberate yourself from that? Well, establishing mindfulness, reflecting on impermanence, reflecting maybe, well, I've already eaten today. I don't need this food, if that's what it is. You're contacting, your nose contacts the nice smell. It's just, I've already eaten today. Maybe you reflect, oh, I'm happy for those people who are enjoying their food, but I don't need it. Or just on the impermanence of it. Maybe you can liberate your mind little by little from that desire until one day you can smell that nice smell, but it doesn't really stimulate any greed or any desire. That's largely achieved by being mindful, paying attention, and then wisely reflecting in that situation. But maybe you have to do it many times until your mind learns the lesson. And a lot of practice is like that, a repeated practice, getting better, getting quicker, sharper to your own desires and attachments and how they come up and how to let go of them. In meditation, you may be sitting quietly, but many memories will flood through your mind if you're not falling asleep. And they will stimulate desire. So maybe it's just a memory, it's not even an external sense contact. You just remember something. Say it could be some form of aversion. You remember something somebody said, or something you feel is wrong in your life, or that something's happened to you, or whatever it is. Just a memory triggers some kind of dissatisfaction or aversion. Again, if you're not mindful, your mind goes to the aversion, remembers and gets annoyed. And it's very quick sometimes, straight away. Feeling of tension, train of thought, negative train of thought, images, thoughts, some kind of chatter going on in the mind, but in a negative vein, because it's being stimulated by something that you associate with. There's something wrong, you made a mistake, someone else did something wrong, something bad happened, something you don't like, something you don't want to face or be with. So how does it arise? Well, we call that unwise attention. You are tending to something that triggers aversion, and you're not mindful enough to catch that. A lot of it is just old habits. You've thought of it before, so you think about it again. You haven't caught that habit yet or recognized it. So it's triggered, it arises, but even then, if you're meditating, you're patient, you can watch how, well, after a while it will fade, it will change. Rarely are you caught into irritation or aversion for the entire period of your meditation. You could be, but probably not. Probably it's just a period for a few moments or a few minutes or maybe many minutes, but eventually it will pass. That's the nature of all sankharas, conditions of mind. They arise, they cease, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. What's the attraction of anger? There must be something that grabs you. Maybe it's based on a view, this is wrong, this shouldn't have happened, this is not good. So it's the view that means that whatever you remember triggers anger, because it doesn't fit with your view. Your view of what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad is enough to trigger anger. Maybe it's a physical pain or the fear of pain. So you have the thought, oh, I've got to go to the doctor, I've got to go to the dentist. Some people don't like the dentist, so just the thought, oh, I've got to go, already puts you in a bad mood. Or a job you've got to do that you don't really want to do. You're feeling tired, or you're not inspired, not motivated to do that job. So, oh, now I've got to go and do that job. So just thinking about something already triggers anger. not mindful and they're not giving unwise attention. Particularly, maybe you've already labelled a person or a job or the dentist or some experience, already labelled it as a negative thing. It's your memory, your perception. Comes up, and maybe comes up regularly. If you don't investigate this, it may be something that you get angry every time, over and over again, not just in meditation, any time. It arises, it passes, but it's something your mind goes for. If you haven't really considered the whole thing, what's going on, it goes for it. It indulges in that aversion. Maybe you think you're right to be angry. Often we have our kind of logic why we feel we should be angry. And unless you've questioned that or investigated it, you just go with it every time. I should be angry because this is wrong. Or I should be feeling angry or fearful because pain is painful. Just the fear of pain, or even the actual experience. So you have pain in your body as you're meditating. The actual aversion to it can be habitual, can't it? You just react with the same aversion each time, as if you haven't ever contemplated it, reflected on it, or if you're unable to establish much mindfulness, it may be just a habitual reaction every time, reacting with the same kind of dislike or even hatred of pain. And greed and lust and desire is the same. There'll always be something that attracts us to that mood. The greed, the anger, the fear, the worry. It seems correct, we're used to it, we're happy to have it in our mind, as it were. Even though it might be unpleasant, there's a certain part of the mind that just accepts it. Maybe just out of habit, out of delusion. So then you have to reflect, well, why is it not good? Why is anger not good? What are the disadvantages of anger? Why is it worth practicing to let it go, to end it? Because it's painful, it's unpleasant, it agitates the mind. It affects, physically it affects you. We all know if you get angry often, and if it's strong anger, well, you get physical symptoms of it. It can give you a stomach ache, headache, makes you look ugly if it's strong anger. Makes it hard to concentrate. If you're angry, it's hard to do anything. It's a very powerful emotion. So it has all its disadvantages, and it's a desire that keeps coming up. So it's a habitual desire that will reinforce itself, come up more often, more easily, trigger all kinds of negative thoughts and views. And of course can be very destructive, not just mentally, but lead on to destructive speech, action. So you consider all the disadvantages, just to make it clear to yourself, well, this is something not good, this is to be let go of. And then, well, what's the release from this? I have to maintain the vigilance, the mindfulness, bring up the mindfulness, pay attention, understand what triggers it, be aware how it is impermanent, it comes, it goes, and that's why we can let go of it, because it's not a permanent state of mind. And look for skillful ways to reflect, to let go of the anger. Maybe cultivating kindness, compassion, patience, tolerance, whatever wise reflection helps. And then you start looking and working towards the release, the liberation from anger, rather than just falling into the same old habit. So these are examples of wise reflection, how you can reflect on how things come up, observe how they pass away, what attracts your mind, what makes your mind give in, particularly to these moods of suffering, but to see the disadvantages of them, and then what do you need to do to be released from them. Quite often we create suffering out of not very much in our mind, don't we? We judge a situation, or we form an opinion about ourselves or a situation or something around us, a person, a place, an activity, and we make suffering appear simply by unwise reflection going on in our mind. If we develop enough mindfulness, we're more mindful, pay attention, maybe we can just hold attention. At first we may be starting to follow a pattern of, feel uncomfortable, unhappy, so start thinking negatively, but then we establish some awareness of what we're doing, consciously be patient with the feeling, but not feed the train of thought or the negative emotion, just let it subside. Patient enough to see it through, and maybe in a very short period of time you can see a mental state that would normally bring you suffering. It can actually just be a thought, a feeling that arises, passes away, just like that. It's gone. Because that's his nature, it's temporary, it's impermanent anyway. It's just most of the time we don't see the impermanence of it. We keep feeding it, even clinging onto it, holding onto it, even though we're suffering. We're our own worst enemy. But if you're more patient and you bring up the mindfulness and investigate in this way, develop some wise reflection, maybe you can see quite clearly, from moment to moment, how this can be let go of, it can end, it's temporary. This is a skill that you develop, isn't it? The skill in establishing mindfulness takes some effort, and then the skill in wise reflection, and that takes practice and learning to use your mind rather than just follow every mood, every train of thought, believing it, following it. I remember when I was new to the practice, there was one monk telling me how he saved himself from a lot of suffering in a situation where he was just developing wise reflection. He was walking on alms round one day and just practicing basic mindfulness, reciting Buddha as he walked. Buddha, 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 walking through the village very mindfully, restrained, doing everything correctly, all good. And then a young woman came by on a motorcycle next to him, driving along, and she didn't see there was a pothole in the street, a very deep one. I think they were mending it, but hadn't finished mending it. And the front wheel of the bike went down the pothole, and the whole bike tipped unexpectedly, and she went flying off the motorcycle into the arms of the monk. He said one moment he's just walking mindfully, Buddha, Buddha, Buddha. The next moment he's got a 20-year-old attractive young lady grasping him as tightly as she could. So he sort of went into shock. It was a very unusual situation. And she was shocked as well. Both of them very embarrassed, felt awkward, as you would. And the lady may have been a little bit hurt as well, because she had been thrown off the motorcycle. Anyway, she managed to get back to her feet and dust herself down. And she was so embarrassed she couldn't even apologize or anything. She just grabbed her bike and drove off. She was so ashamed, sort of so flustered that she didn't apologize. She drove off. And the monk just started to think, well, did I do anything wrong? And he said it really shocked him, because he's a new monk and he's learning to keep the Vinaya. One of the rules is you don't touch females. So did I do anything wrong here? He's thrown into doubt, anxiety. Has anything bad happened? Did I have lust when she grabbed me? And he just said, walking back to the monastery, he said, I've got to use wise reflection here. This is what the Buddha taught, and this is the tool he gave me. So he's walking along, trying to establish some mindfulness and wisdom around the whole situation. It's like reviewing what had happened. Well, I didn't ask for this to happen, it just happened. I didn't have any intention. He was aware that it was a young lady and she was attractive, so yes, there was a temptation there, but he didn't do anything wrong. He kept his mindfulness, his restraint. She quickly let go of him, dusted herself off, went away. So he kept thinking through, I didn't really have any intention to break my rules. It's just an unfortunate thing that happened. So just reflecting until he got back to the monastery and decided there's really nothing he had to regret in the whole thing. He hadn't done anything wrong, it's just an accident. And his mind settled down, having been previously feeling very uncomfortable, not with the event, but just with his own practice of his monk's rules, whether he had broken a rule. And he went back to the monastery and had his meal, and during the meal, the young lady returned to the monastery with her fiancé. She brought a chaperone, and they came and they bowed, and she apologised profusely and offered some flowers to the monk. I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I know this totally awkward, inappropriate thing for me to end up in your arms. But she understood it was just an accident, he understood it was just an accident, so everybody was clear and there was nothing inappropriate was intended from the whole thing. It was just an accident. But nevertheless, because she thought she'd probably shocked the monk and embarrassed the monk, so she apologised, bowed, and then went home, and that was good. Everyone cleared the air. But the monk said he found wise reflection was his real refuge, just reflecting on what went on, and why, how the whole situation unfolded, what it did to his mind. And he said, well, I can't see anything wrong in my mind, any bad intention or any unskillful mental states based around this whole thing, so that's an end to it, and I'm going to let it go right here. That day, at that time, I'm going to let it go. And that's what he said he did. And we might be doing that regularly in our practice. Different situations happen that maybe bring up certain reactions in our mind, but when you establish wise reflection, that's bringing the Dhamma to bear on a particular situation, on your thoughts, your feeling, your emotion, the actual situation, whatever's happened, good or bad. We use the Dhamma like this. We introduce Dhamma into our thinking. Wise reflection, and can save ourselves a lot of suffering. Save ourselves getting angry, upset, doubts. Save ourselves falling into lust or desire as well. So wise reflection is a tool, but we have to learn how to use it skillfully to free the mind from suffering. You know the cause, what brings up a certain mental state, how it passes, what its attraction is, what its disadvantages are, and how to liberate your mind from it. So anyway, just some reflections on wise reflection for you tonight. I'll leave you with those teachings.